Lieutenant Alex Reyes adjusted his harness as the shuttle cut through the atmosphere of Zephyria, a planet that had remained uncharted for centuries. The mission briefing had been brief and cryptic, a standard reconnaissance on a supposedly uninhabited world. But as the shuttle descended, Alex felt a gnawing sense of unease. The planet's surface, displayed on his console, was like nothing he had ever seen. Vast stretches of dense forest interspersed with glowing crystalline formations that shimmered in a spectrum of unnatural colors. Initiating final descent, the shuttle's AI announced in its calm, measured tone. All systems normal. Alex gripped the controls tightly, his instincts alert. He had been a soldier for a decade, serving in the Interstellar Fleet's Exploration Corps. His missions had taken him to countless planets, some hostile, some barren, and some teeming with life. But Zephyria was different. The air was thick with something intangible, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. As the shuttle touched down in a small clearing, Alex performed a final systems check. Everything was in order, but the uneasy feeling persisted. He shrugged it off, grabbing his helmet and stepping into the airlock. The door hissed open, and the alien world greeted him with a rush of humid air, tinged with the scent of ozone and something floral. The landscape was otherworldly. Towering trees with bark that gleamed like polished metal surrounded him, their branches swaying gently even though there was no wind. The ground beneath his boots felt soft, almost spongy, as if the earth itself was alive. He activated his visor's scanning mode, sweeping the area for any signs of life or anomalies. Scans indicate high levels of unknown energy signatures, the AI informed him. Proceed with caution. Alex nodded, though he hardly needed the reminder. He moved forward, following the source of the energy readings deeper into the forest. The light from the crystalline formations cast eerie shadows on the ground, and the trees seemed to close in around him as he ventured further from the shuttle. After what felt like hours of walking, the readings on his visor spiked. He pushed through a dense thicket of iridescent foliage and stumbled into a clearing. At its center stood a structure, unlike anything he had ever seen. The building, or was it a ship, looked organic, as if it had grown from the earth itself. Its surface was smooth, almost liquid in appearance, and it pulsed with a soft blue light. The structure was roughly dome-shaped, with tendrils extending from its base, anchoring it to the ground like the roots of an ancient tree. Alex approached cautiously, his weapon at the ready. As he neared the structure, a wave of energy washed over him, causing his visor to flicker and his head to pound. He staggered, nearly dropping his weapon as a sharp pain lanced through his skull. And then he heard it. A voice, soft and trembling, not in his ears but inside his mind. "Please, help me." Alex froze, the voice reverberating in his thoughts. It was a plea, filled with fear and desperation. He tried to respond, but before he could gather his thoughts, the ground beneath him shifted. The tendrils of the structure began to move, curling upward and reaching out towards him. Panic surged through him. But before he could react, the tendrils wrapped around his legs, holding him in place. "Who are you?" Alex thought, struggling against the tendrils. But the voice in his mind was growing fainter, more urgent. "You are inside me now," the voice whispered, the words echoing through his consciousness. The structure's tendrils pulsed with energy, and a bright light engulfed Alex, blinding him. He felt a strange sensation, as if his very essence was being pulled out of his body and drawn into the structure. He tried to resist, but the force was too strong. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the figure of a girl, humanoid but undeniably alien, her wide, fearful eyes locking onto his. And then there was nothing. When Alex regained consciousness, he was lying on the forest floor, the sky above him darkened by thick clouds. His body ached, and his mind felt different. He pushed himself up, groaning as he did so, and looked around. The structure was still there, but the tendrils had receded, lying dormant on the ground. The blue light had dimmed, now just a faint glow. He tried to remember what had happened, but his thoughts were jumbled, memories overlapping in ways that didn't make sense. And then he heard her voice again, clearer now, and filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "I am Niara," she said softly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I needed to connect, to survive." "Niara," Alex thought, the name foreign yet familiar. What did you do to me? I'm sorry, she repeated, her voice trembling. I'm the last of my kind. We live through symbiosis, merging with other beings to survive. I didn't have a choice. I was afraid. Alex felt a surge of emotions that weren't his own: fear, loneliness, despair. He realized with a start that these feelings were coming from Niara. She was inside his mind, their thoughts intertwined in a way that felt both intimate and invasive. You're inside me, he whispered aloud, the realization sinking in. Yes, she responded, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. But I can help you. I can guide you. We can survive together. Alex took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. This was far beyond anything he had ever trained for. But there was no going back now. He was bound to Niara, their fates intertwined. All right, he thought, trying to focus. We'll figure this out, together. And as he stood up, feeling the strange new presence within him, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just been irrevocably changed by a trembling alien girl who now shared his mind. Alex Reyes paced back and forth in the clearing, the reality of his situation beginning to sink in. He wasn't just on an alien planet anymore. He was sharing his mind with an alien consciousness. The concept was so far beyond anything he had ever encountered that it was difficult to fully grasp. But as the minutes passed, the presence of Niara inside him became increasingly undeniable. He could feel her, like a shadow in the corners of his thoughts, her emotions bleeding into his own, her memories occasionally surfacing in vivid, disorienting flashes. Who are you really? Alex finally asked, his voice trembling slightly, though he tried to steady it. What are you doing here? Why me? The response came immediately, not as a voice in his head, but as a sensation. An overwhelming flood of images, sounds, and emotions that nearly brought him to his knees. He saw a world bathed in a soft golden light, filled with beings that looked like Niara, tall, elegant with shimmering skin and large, expressive eyes. They lived in harmony with their environment, their society built on knowledge, creativity, and a deep connection to the natural world. But then the vision shifted. The golden light faded, replaced by darkness and chaos. He saw the sky tearing open, a cataclysmic event that unleashed a force of unimaginable power. The ground split apart, and the once beautiful world was consumed by destruction. Niara's people tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed. As their world collapsed around them, they activated the sanctuary, a structure designed to preserve the consciousness of the survivors in the hope that they could one day find new hosts and continue their existence. Niara was the last of them. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Alex gasping for breath, his head spinning from the intensity of it all. I am the last of my kind, Niara's voice echoed in his mind, softer now, filled with sorrow. When our world was destroyed, those of us who survived took refuge in the sanctuary, hoping that one day we could find a way to continue. We can only survive by merging with another being, sharing their life, their experiences. But it's not a choice we make lightly. I was alone, afraid. When you arrived, You didn't have a choice, Alex finished for her, understanding dawning. He felt a pang of sympathy for Niara, the weight of her loneliness and desperation pressing against his own emotions. He had been alone too, out here on the edge of known space, cut off from everything he knew. But his loneliness paled in comparison to what Niara had endured. What happens now? Alex asked, trying to focus. He had to think clearly. This situation was unprecedented, but he was still a soldier, trained to adapt to any circumstance, no matter how strange. We learn to coexist, Niara answered, a note of hope creeping into her voice. Our consciousnesses are linked, but we can still retain our individuality. I can help you. I have knowledge about this planet, about technology, about things you cannot imagine. In return, you allow me to share your life, your experiences. It's the only way I can survive. Alex considered this, weighing his options. Could he live with someone else in his mind, sharing his thoughts and emotions? The idea was unsettling, to say the least. But what choice did he have? He was stranded on an alien planet with no way to contact his superiors, no way to call for help, and if Nyara's knowledge could keep him alive, then maybe this symbiosis wasn't entirely a curse. "All right," he said finally, a sense of resolve settling over him. "We'll work together. But you need to promise me something, Nyara. No more surprises. If we're going to share a mind, we need to be honest with each other. No holding back." "I promise," Nyara responded, her voice sincere, almost relieved. "I didn't want to force this on you, Alex. I'm sorry." Alex felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, not his own, but Nyara's. He could sense her emotions so clearly now, as if they were his own. It was a strange sensation, but he knew he would have to get used to it. Their fates were intertwined, whether he liked it or not. With that, Alex decided to explore more of the planet. If they were going to survive, they needed to understand their surroundings. The sanctuary was a start, but there had to be more. He could feel Nyara's presence guiding him as he moved through the forest, her knowledge of the planet helping him avoid dangerous areas and leading him towards potential resources. As they walked, Alex felt Nyara's memories surface more frequently, triggered by the sights and sounds of the planet. He saw flashes of her life before the destruction, her family, her people, the beauty of their world. It was all gone now, but the memories were vivid, and they gave him a deeper understanding of who Nyara was. "How long have you been alone?" Alex asked, the question forming almost unconsciously as he felt the weight of her memories. "Centuries," Nyara answered, her voice tinged with sadness. "Time moves differently in the sanctuary. It's hard to measure. But it's been long enough that I thought I would never find another being to merge with, until you came." Alex couldn't imagine what that must have been like, to be alone for so long, with only memories to keep you company. He felt a pang of guilt, realizing that he had been frustrated with the isolation of space travel, when Nyara's loneliness had been far more profound. As they walked, the forest began to change. The trees grew taller, their trunks wider, and the ground became firmer. Alex noticed strange symbols carved into the bark, glowing faintly in the dim light. "These are markers," Nyara explained. "My people used them to guide each other to important locations. We're close to something that could help us." The symbols led them to a clearing, where the trees parted to reveal a massive structure, even larger than the sanctuary. It was made of the same organic material, but it was more elaborate, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. The blue light that had been faint in the sanctuary was stronger here, pulsating rhythmically. "This is a knowledge repository," Nyara said, her voice filled with awe. "It contains everything my people knew: science, technology, history. If we can access it, it could provide us with the means to survive, perhaps even to communicate with your people." Alex felt a surge of hope. This was the breakthrough they needed. If they could unlock the knowledge within the structure, they might find a way off this planet, or at least a way to survive long enough to be rescued. "How do we access it?" he asked, stepping closer to the structure. "I can help you," Nyara replied, her voice stronger now, filled with determination. "But it requires a deeper connection. I'll need to merge our consciousnesses more fully, just for a moment, to interface with the repository. It might be overwhelming." Alex hesitated. The idea of merging even more deeply with Nyara was unsettling, but they had come this far, and he couldn't turn back now. "Do it," he said, steeling himself for whatever was to come. As soon as he gave his consent, Alex felt a rush of energy course through him, more intense than anything he had experienced before. Nyara's consciousness intertwined with his completely, their thoughts merging into a single stream. For a brief moment, he felt like he was no longer Alex Reyes, but something else, something greater, something with the combined knowledge and experiences of two beings. The structure responded to their merged consciousness, its surface rippling and shifting as it opened, revealing a glowing core. Information flooded Alex's mind, too much to process all at once. But Nyara was there, guiding him, helping him sort through the vast repository of knowledge. When the connection finally broke, Alex stumbled back, gasping for breath. The flood of information receded, leaving him with fragments of understanding. enough to know that they had found what they needed. "I'm sorry." Nyara's voice was gentle, concerned. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you." It's all right," Alex managed, his head still spinning. "Did it work? Did we get what we needed?" "Yes," Nyara confirmed, relief evident in her voice. "I now have access to the repository's knowledge. We have what we need to survive here and possibly to contact your people. But we need to be careful. The repository mentioned a presence on this planet, something dangerous. We're not alone here, Alex." Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words. He had known from the beginning that something was off about Zephyria, but now he had confirmation that they were not alone, and that whatever else was out there, it was a threat. "Then we need to be prepared," Alex said, his resolve hardening. "We'll use whatever knowledge we can from the repository. But first, we need to find a place to fortify, somewhere safe where we can plan our next move." Nyara agreed, and together they began to search the repository for information on the planet's topography, looking for a defensible location. As they worked, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out, that whatever presence was lurking on Zephyria was already aware of them. But with Nyara by his side, in his mind, he felt a strange sense of comfort. They were in this together, and together they would face whatever challenges the planet threw at them. As they moved deeper into the forest, the knowledge from the repository guiding their steps, Alex couldn't help but wonder what the future held. He had come to Zephyria alone, but now he was no longer just himself. He was something more, something different, and he was no longer alone. The days on Zephyria blurred into each other as Alex and Nyara adjusted to their new reality. Every morning, Alex would wake up to the soft hum of the planet's life force, a sensation he had grown accustomed to since Nyara had merged with him. It was as if the planet itself was alive, breathing in sync with them. Nyara's presence in his mind had become a constant, no longer a foreign intrusion, but something almost comforting. They communicated effortlessly now, their thoughts flowing into one another without the need for spoken words. But their bond was not without its challenges. Nyara's memories continued to surface, sometimes without warning, pulling Alex into vivid emotional recollections of her life before the destruction of her world. These memories were intense, often leaving Alex disoriented and emotionally drained. He saw through her eyes the beauty of a world that no longer existed, the sweeping plains of golden grass, the crystal-clear waters of her home planet's lakes, the towering spires of her people's cities that glistened under a sun much gentler than Earth's. He also felt the deep, searing pain of loss that Nyara carried with her, the sorrow of being the last of her kind. Despite the emotional toll, Alex knew these memories were important. They were a part of who Nyara was, and by understanding them, he was beginning to understand her. The more he saw and felt, the deeper his empathy grew. But it also made him realize just how fragile their connection was. They were two beings from entirely different worlds, thrown together by circumstance, trying to coexist in a way neither had ever been trained for. One evening, after a particularly intense memory of Nyara's, Alex sat down by a stream they had discovered earlier in the day. The water was clear and cool, and the sound of it flowing over the rocks was soothing. He dipped his hands into the water, splashing his face, trying to clear his mind. "Are you all right?" Nyara's voice whispered in his thoughts, her concern palpable. "I'm fine," Alex replied, though he knew she could sense his exhaustion. "It's just a lot to take in. Your memories, your emotions, they're so strong. It's like I'm living them myself." "I'm sorry," Nyara said softly, and Alex could feel her guilt. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I can try to hold back." "No," Alex interrupted, shaking his head. "Don't. I need to understand. If we're going to survive this, I need to know what you know, feel what you feel. We're in this together, remember?" Nyara didn't respond immediately, but Alex could sense her relief. She had been alone for so long, carrying the weight of her memories by herself. Now, for the first time in centuries, she had someone to share them with. And for Alex, despite the strangeness of their situation, he found that he didn't mind it. He had always been a loner, but now, with Nyara, he didn't feel so isolated. "Thank you," Nyara finally said, her voice filled with gratitude. I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who could understand, even a little bit. We're not so different, Alex thought, leaning back against a tree. We've both lost a lot, but we have each other now, and we have a job to do. Their task was becoming clearer with each passing day. The knowledge repository they had accessed was a treasure trove of information, but it was also a reminder of the dangers that lurked on Zephyria. The presence Nyara had mentioned was not just a vague threat. It was a malevolent force, something ancient and powerful, waiting to be unleashed. The more they delved into the repository, the more they realized just how dangerous their situation was. The entity was a remnant of the cataclysm that had destroyed Nyara's world. It had followed the survivors to Zephyria, lying dormant until it sensed the presence of consciousness, specifically, the merging of two beings like Alex and Nyara. The repository's records indicated that the entity had the ability to corrupt and consume, feeding off the life force of entire planets. It was a force of pure destruction, and it had now awakened. We need to find a way to stop it, Alex said, his determination growing. There has to be something in the repository that can help us. There is, Nyara replied, her voice steady but tinged with anxiety. But it won't be easy. The repository mentions a weapon, something my people created in a desperate attempt to fight the entity. But it was never completed. The plans are there, but the technology is complex. We'll need time to understand it, to build it. Then we don't have a moment to lose, Alex said, standing up. We need to start now. Over the next few days, Alex and Nyara immersed themselves in the repository's knowledge, working together to decipher the plans for the weapon. The technology was unlike anything Alex had ever seen, an intricate fusion of organic and mechanical elements, designed to harness the energy of Zephyria itself. It was a weapon of last resort, a device capable of unleashing a devastating force that could destroy the entity, but at a great cost. The energy required to power this weapon. Alex trailed off, reading through the plans. It's massive. Where are we going to find that kind of power? The sanctuary, Nyara answered. It was built to sustain the last of my people, to protect their consciousness. If we can redirect its energy, it might be enough, but it would mean destroying the sanctuary, and with it, the last remnants of my kind. Alex felt the weight of her words. The sanctuary was more than just a structure. It was the last connection Nyara had to her people, to her past. Destroying it would mean severing that link forever. Nyara, are you sure about this? Alex asked, hesitant. This is your home, your last connection to everything you've lost? Nyara was silent for a long moment, and Alex could feel the conflict within her. She didn't want to lose the sanctuary, but she also knew that if they didn't stop the entity, it would consume everything, Zephyria, Alex, and eventually the rest of the galaxy. It's the only way, Nyara finally said, her voice firm. I can't let the entity destroy another world. My people wouldn't have wanted that. We need to do this, Alex. Alex nodded, though he could feel Nyara's pain. He wished there was another way, but time was running out and they had no choice. With renewed urgency, they began to prepare. The process of redirecting the sanctuary's energy was complex, requiring precise calibration and timing. Nyara guided Alex through each step, her knowledge of the technology invaluable. But as they worked, the entity's presence grew stronger. The planet itself seemed to react to its awakening. Storms began to brew on the horizon, and the once vibrant colors of the forest faded, replaced by a sickly pallor. We're running out of time, Nyara warned, as they neared the final stages of the weapon's construction. The entity is close. We need to be ready. The day of the final confrontation arrived. Alex and Nyara stood before the sanctuary, the weapon now fully assembled but dormant. The sky above them was dark, the air charged with a sense of impending doom. Alex could feel the entity's presence, a cold, malevolent force that seemed to press down on them from all sides. Once we activate the weapon, there's no turning back, Nyara said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The sanctuary will be destroyed, and with it, everything that remains of my people. Alex reached out with his thoughts, offering comfort. You're not alone, Nyara. We're in this together." She didn't respond with words, but Alex felt a surge of warmth from her, a deep, abiding gratitude. They had come a long way from those first moments of fear and confusion. They were partners now, bound by something far stronger than circumstance. With a final breath, Alex activated the weapon. The sanctuary trembled, its blue light intensifying as the energy was redirected. The ground beneath them shook as the weapon began to power up, drawing in the energy that would be needed to destroy the entity once and for all. But the entity was not idle. It sensed the threat, and its presence grew, manifesting in the form of dark, swirling clouds that descended upon the sanctuary. The air crackled with energy as the entity tried to force its way into the sanctuary, to stop them before it was too late. "We have to hold on," Niara urged, her voice strained. "Just a little longer." The entity's assault intensified, and Alex could feel its dark tendrils reaching into his mind, trying to tear him apart from within. But Niara was there, her presence a shield, protecting him as they fought together. It was a battle of wills, of consciousness, and Alex could feel the strain of it, the immense pressure of holding back the entity's power. Finally, with a deafening roar, the weapon activated. A blinding light erupted from the sanctuary, shooting into the sky and engulfing the entity in a wave of pure energy. The force of it was overwhelming, and Alex felt himself being pulled into the light, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer power of the weapon. In that moment, as the light consumed everything around them, Alex felt a deep connection with Niara, something beyond words. Their consciousnesses merged completely, not just a partnership, but a true unity. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, her essence, and she could feel his. They were no longer two separate beings, but one, united in purpose and spirit. The entity's presence faded, its dark power obliterated by the weapon's energy. The light gradually dimmed, leaving behind only silence and the faint glow of the now dormant sanctuary. Alex opened his eyes, feeling the stillness around him. The storm had passed, the sky clearing to reveal the soft, natural colors of Zephyria once more. The sanctuary was gone, reduced to ruins, but the entity had been destroyed. They had won. But as the reality of their victory settled in, Alex realized something else. Niara's presence in his mind was different, stronger, but also more complete. He could feel her with him, more closely than ever before. They were no longer just two beings sharing a mind. They were one, their consciousnesses fully merged into a single entity. "Niara?" Alex thought, reaching out, though he knew she was already there. "I'm here," she answered, her voice blending seamlessly with his own thoughts. "We did it, Alex. We stopped the entity." "But what happens now?" Alex asked, unsure of what this new existence meant. "We move forward," Niara replied, her voice calm and filled with a sense of peace. "Together. We're not just Alex or Niara anymore. We're something new, and whatever comes next, we'll face it as one." Alex, no, they, stood up, feeling the strength of their combined consciousness, the unity of their being. They were no longer alone, and that knowledge filled them with a sense of purpose and hope. As they looked out over the now peaceful landscape of Zephyria, they knew that their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead, united in a bond that transcended anything they had ever known. And together, they would forge a new path, one that would carry them beyond the limits of their old lives and into a future filled with endless possibilities. The days that followed the destruction of the entity were a strange mix of triumph and uncertainty. Alex, now fully merged with Niara, could feel the remnants of the sanctuary's power still humming through the air, though it was much quieter now. The landscape of Zephyria, once vibrant and alive, had returned to a state of calm. The planet had been saved, but at a cost that both Alex and Niara felt deeply. As they explored the ruins of the sanctuary, they found that much of the knowledge and technology stored within had been lost when the weapon was activated. The once glowing structures were now cold and lifeless, the intricate patterns that had adorned the walls reduced to faded etchings. It was a stark reminder of what had been sacrificed to stop the entity. Yet, despite the loss, Alex felt a deep sense of resolve. The bond between him and Niara had strengthened to the point where they no longer needed to communicate with words. Thoughts, emotions, and even instincts flowed between them seamlessly. They had become a singular being, one that carried the memories and experiences of both their lives. But with this newfound unity came a deeper understanding of the threat they had faced. The entity, though destroyed, had left behind echoes, fragments of its dark influence that still lingered in the atmosphere, like the last wisps of a dissipating storm. These echoes were weak, but they were a reminder that the entity's power had been vast, and that remnants of it could still pose a danger. We need to make sure the entity is truly gone, Alex thought, feeling the determination surge through him. Niara's agreement resonated within him, a silent but powerful affirmation. Their journey led them to a part of Zephyria they had not yet explored, a vast, barren wasteland on the far side of the planet. The land here was different, almost devoid of life, as if the entity's presence had poisoned it long before Alex's arrival. The ground was cracked and dry, the air thick with a faint, acrid scent that made Alex's throat burn. As they ventured deeper into the wasteland, they felt the echoes of the entity grow stronger. It was as if the very ground beneath their feet was alive with the remnants of the entity's energy, pulsing faintly like a dying heartbeat. "We're close," Niara's voice echoed in Alex's mind, her tone filled with both anticipation and caution. "The source of the echoes, it's up ahead." The source turned out to be a massive chasm, a gaping wound in the planet's surface that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness below. The air around the chasm was thick with the entity's remnants, a swirling vortex of dark energy that crackled with ominous sparks of light. It was here, in this place of darkness, that the last traces of the entity had gathered, coalescing into a final, desperate stronghold. "We can't let it regain power," Alex thought, his mind racing as he considered their options. "If we don't stop this now, everything we fought for will be lost." Niara agreed, and together they formulated a plan. The entity's remnants were weak, but they were still dangerous. The only way to ensure that it was completely destroyed was to use the last of the sanctuary's energy, what little remained after the weapon's activation, to cleanse the chasm and erase the entity's influence for good. But there was a catch. The sanctuary's energy was now intertwined with their own. To use it would mean sacrificing the last vestiges of Niara's people's legacy, as well as a significant part of their own combined power. It would leave them vulnerable, perhaps even weakened to the point where they might not survive the aftermath. "It's a risk we have to take," Niara said, though Alex could feel her hesitation. The sanctuary had been her home, her refuge, and using its remaining energy in this way would mean letting go of the last connection she had to her past. "We'll do it together," Alex thought, his resolve unwavering. "We've come this far. We can finish this." With that, they began the process. They stood at the edge of the chasm, the dark energy swirling around them like a living thing. Alex could feel the sanctuary's power surging within him, a bright, pure light that contrasted sharply with the darkness of the entity's remnants. Niara guided him, helping him focus the energy, channeling it into a single, concentrated beam of light that they directed into the heart of the chasm. The ground trembled as the light pierced the darkness, cutting through the swirling energy like a knife. The remnants of the entity recoiled, their power scattering in all directions as the sanctuary's energy burned through them. It was a battle of forces, light against dark, creation against destruction, and for a moment, Alex feared that they would not be strong enough to overcome the entity's lingering power. But then, with a final, blinding flash, the light consumed the darkness. The chasm, once filled with the entity's remnants, was now silent and still. The dark energy was gone, eradicated by the sanctuary's power. The echoes of the entity had been silenced. Alex and Niara stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, as the reality of what they had just done settled in. The sanctuary's energy was spent, its last remnants used up in the final cleansing. They could feel the absence of that power, a void where the sanctuary's light had once been. But they also felt a sense of peace, of closure. The entity was gone, truly gone, and Zephyria was safe. As they looked out over the barren wasteland, Alex felt Nyara's presence beside him, her thoughts intertwined with his own. They had succeeded, but the cost had been great. They were weaker now, their combined power diminished, but they were still alive. They had each other, and that was enough. What now? Alex thought, feeling the weight of the question. We rebuild, Nyara answered, her voice filled with quiet determination. We may have lost the sanctuary, but we're still here. We can start anew, create something better, something that honors the sacrifices we've made. Alex nodded, agreeing with her. The journey they had been on had changed them both, in ways neither of them could have predicted. They were no longer just a soldier and an alien consciousness. They were something new, something that had never existed before, and they had a future to build, together. As they began the long journey back to the part of Zephyria that still thrived, they talked about what that future might look like. Nyara shared her knowledge of her people's culture, their technology, their art. And Alex spoke of his own world, the things he missed, the things he hoped to see again someday. They knew that it would take time to recover from the battle with the entity, but they were not discouraged. The bond they shared had become their greatest strength, a connection that transcended their individual identities and gave them the power to face whatever challenges lay ahead. By the time they reached the forest, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden light over the landscape. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling like a soft whisper. Alex and Nyara stood at the edge of the forest, looking out over the world they had saved, a world that now held the promise of a new beginning. We did it, Alex thought, a sense of accomplishment filling him. We saved this planet. Yes, Nyara agreed, her voice filled with pride. And now it's time to build something new. They walked into the forest together, their steps in perfect harmony, their thoughts and emotions perfectly aligned. They had been through so much, but they had emerged stronger, united in a way that few could ever understand. As they moved deeper into the forest, the night began to fall, the stars coming out one by one in the sky above. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Alex and Nyara felt hopeful. They had each other, and together they could face anything. And as they disappeared into the shadows of the trees, the planet of Zephyria settled into a peaceful silence, its guardians watching over it, ready to protect it for as long as they lived.